Welcome back, friends, to yet another episode of Fellowship of the Golden Age. And with me today, I have Andrea here from the other side of the world. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Okay. Um, so the theme of this series is separate selves, and I like to sort of open up with asking my interview subject your definition, a way that you could explain what a separate self is. So would you share that with us now, Andrea?
Sure, sure. I like to think of a separate self as a subpersonality within my own, uh, central personality. So when I work on my own psychology and look at myself to try to resolve issues within myself, I tend to try to look at a separate self as the separate identity and kind of really give it its own identity so that I can separate it from me, and be able to to dissolve it, to recognize that it's not me. It's just this other. Um, the word entity comes to mind. I think sometimes maybe it is an entity. It's stronger. Some are stronger than others. Some pull on my emotions and my thoughts stronger than others. Um, but yes, that's how I would categorize a separate self.
Yeah, okay, cool. It's just funny you said entity because it just reminds me of one of like my key turning point experiences. And it was when I was doing yoga one time, and you know how the voice, you just start chattering away in your mind. At first I was all present, and then like that voice is just going blah 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 and having a talk away there. And then another voice came through and it said, it doesn't care about you. And I realized, oh my God, like that voice that's talking all the time in my mind, like it doesn't care about me. Like it was just so, I got this sense like it really is a separate entity from me, like no matter
Mhm.
how benign it seems.
I think that there can be actual entities, or even demons, or other energies that are attached to these cells, because the selves are born out of traumatic events, some more severe than others. So, depending on the event and what has happened, there can be really dark energies attached to the state of consciousness that separate self is tied to. So you're working with your own story that you've created, this own compartmentalized self that you've created, because the separate self helps you to survive and to deal with a situation. And then on top of that, sometimes then you have these other stronger negative forces that can engage you exactly with the so it might be something stronger than just your own negative voice trying to stop you from doing something. It could actually be an outside force that is also working against your spiritual growth too, and you're interpreting it with that energy that's coming through, that like, hey, don't do this, like, or you're worthless, or why ever try this? It's, it's pointless, you'll never be successful, or whatever, whatever the myriad of wonderful excuses that they always seem to throw at you. But I think it can definitely be more than just what's going on in your own psychology. I think that's something that we really have to be aware of.
Mm.
um, and it can be really scary. I know that it was very scary for me to start knowing, to learn about dark forces and outer forces. But ultimately, it somehow I intuitively knew that it was true, because it made sense to me that, okay, there's something more to this than um, me saying these things to myself, or this inner dialogue that I would have inside my own head.
Yeah, yeah, like years, or not even that long ago actually, but yeah, I've had experiences where I had voices telling me to kill myself, and the last time it happened was when the primal self came up, and because of how far I've come spiritually, I was able to straight away make sense and go, that's not me. Like, this is not my own voice. I knew it was a demon telling me to kill myself. Whereas, yeah, when you're identified with these entities, you actually think it's yourself, your own thoughts, which, yeah, how we could possibly think such horrible things about ourselves. It's kind of inexplicable, but it does explain it when, yeah, in
So
this.
you obviously did enough work on your own psychology to heal the primal self or the primal wound of that particular situation, so that you had enough continuity and wholeness in yourself to recognize that it wasn't you, and that
Yeah,
you would not say that to yourself. Yeah.
yeah,
I've had
yeah,
definitely similar experiences where I was so broken that I didn't know where it was coming from, but something intuitively kept me forging on to continue to work on like this really deep darkness inside of myself, and to resolve the trauma, to resolve the healing. However, I felt that I needed to do that, whether it was inner work or working with other healers or whatever I felt that I needed to do that presented itself at the time. I did it until I reached a point where I was whole enough in myself. So when it again came at me, I was able to do like you've done as well and go, you know what, this is not me. And then can really separate myself, and it really does resolve itself. It goes away because it has nothing in you
yeah.
to
And
trigger.
also like to like apply the tools straight away, like, because I knew, oh whoa, this is serious if demons are doing this. And straight away I just started working with Archangel Michael and invoking spiritual crisis, that rosary and everything, because I think that's what the invocations are for. Like, we do need the masters to come in and help give us a bit of relief from the torment of these entities.
Did you find you felt more protected giving the invocations and giving the like specifically that the rosary, the Archangel Michael rosary?
Yeah, I just downloaded the entire spiritual crisis toolkit.
I did that as well,
Yeah,
many
yeah. And so
many times.
times when I couldn't do the rosary, like, I just like put my earbuds in, and the minute I started freaking out, I just put the earbuds in and start listening to Archangel Michael's dictation and be like, that's better, and yeah, I just kept doing it until I was good again, like, which it took a couple of weeks, but yeah, it took a while,
I
but yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, so we've sort of like dived into all the really deep, heavy stuff already. So what'd be good is if you tell us a little bit about your journey, and maybe even if you can talk a little bit more about those experiences. Like, I'd just be interested to hear. Just tell us about your spiritual journey, and what you'd like to share.
Sure. I think given the topic already about what we're talking about, I found the Ascended Masters teachings in 2010. And so I've been working with the invocations and the tools and the rosaries, and since that time. And when I first found it, I was in this place where I really saw myself as a dark being. And I wanted to, I suppose I was looking at redeeming myself. So I guess the story in my head is that's what I was. But inside, it didn't feel that way. So I was always in inner conflict. But I was in a place where I didn't even see myself as being of light. I was really, really in a dark place. And I saw myself almost as a mechanized being that I was not even given, I wasn't even created by God. I was some type of, um, I guess, afterthought is I was just kind of plopped here and not loved, just kind of created this afterthought. And so I really had to work a lot with overcoming a lot of broken psychology from severe traumas. I didn't really recognize it at the, I mean, I recognized it at the time, but now looking back at it, I didn't recognize how deeply I guess I had been wounded, or where I went with my own psychology, and what I opened myself up to, even to get away from these forces and everything. So one of the first things, actually, what was introduced to me in 2010 was the Spiritual Crisis Toolkit. And I probably worked with it for a good, I don't know, 8 years, honestly. Like, that's really where I was at, where I would come and go, except that when I did it, it didn't necessarily make me feel better. It almost made me feel worse. But in a way, I did feel better. Like, I felt more protected, but it really brought it up. It brought up a lot of muck. The Mother Mary in the Mother Mary Rosary and the dictation in there, she talks about it basically like stirring the pot, and you're like, you've got this pool of water, and when the pot starts to get stirred, the muck starts to come up. And it really, those invocations, or rosaries as they were called, really it stirred up a lot of muck. And I worked a long time trying to work through all of that, clearing all of that energy, a lot that I had taken on. So fast forward to now, so what I can see between now and then, with all the work that I actually had to put in to get myself out of that mess, I took on a lot. And I think one of my things was that I gave myself away, and I became kind of an open door for whatever wanted to abuse me was there to abuse me, and that somehow was comforting to me.
So are you talking about beings in the material realm abusing you, or in the etheric realm or astral realm?
In this life, no, I'm not talking about physical beings. So in this life, it was more like astral plane, mental, the emotional, etheric realms. But I know, going back through with my prior, like going back through with my healing, it definitely was in the physical. And also in ways that I believe were in the physical that I can't really wrap my head around, because I think things were just so different that far back, that I try to give a mental image to it so that I can work with it. But I think some of the stuff that came up for me was really so, almost seemed crazy or far-fetched, that I couldn't make sense of it in a human context of how we see life now. But I just went with it, and I just trusted in myself that even if it sounded crazy, absolutely crazy in my head, that there was in some way there was some reality to it. And when I would work with it and I would heal it, like I did see some healers at the time, even working with the invocations that I thought I needed to work with, and then things would shift and they would clear, and I would feel better and I wouldn't feel as burdened. So I know that there was definitely reality to a lot of the things that I was working on in my head, even though like I couldn't really give it a clear, like I couldn't articulate it in a way that like other people would understand and give a context to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And why do you think that you were so, like, what's your history like, and like why do you think you were so burdened by all of these energies? Like, what was your past in this lifetime like? Was it eventful, uneventful, or?
In this lifetime, I cannot say that I've had anything super eventful that would lead to those type of circumstances. I think with everybody, I mean, I had a sort of a difficult childhood growing up with my parents, and their psychology. I mean, I've had things happen in this lifetime. To me, it's not like I've not had anything. Uh, I've not had anything super traumatic. I guess I guess instead of like to not really go into it, I've never had anything that I can say, oh, wow, like, but I've had this happen to me, and that would make sense. In fact, the things that were going on in my head didn't correlate with the things on the outside. So I would look at it and go, am I making all of this up? Because I don't see anything in my life now that would create these gaping wounds inside of
Yeah.
my own psychology. So I am able to like recall past lives, or
Yeah,
at least put a
I'd,
story
I'd,
to it. It really,
I'd love to
I'm
hear
sorry.
about. Yeah, I'd love to hear about like anything you've seen in your past lives that would, that can sort of help give the whole picture of why you've been so burdened.
I've experienced a lot of torture. So in my past lives, I know that I've been severely tortured. I've had things done to me. I've been forced to do things to others. Um, I feel like even this is like would be like a story that like I kind of put together for myself. That again, this is something that wouldn't make sense, but on some level, I was maybe on an etheric level that I had been almost operated on and dismantled. And I had pieces of other energetic pieces of other people put into me, and then
Wow.
mine were taken out and put into them. And I've done soul retrievals on myself. Um, just I've yeah, I mean, I think things that people are like, oh, that's really weird, or maybe I know the masters do
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
really more in previous dispensations with soul fragments.
Mm.
But I mean, it does get brought up, and I've experienced that and recalled things to myself. I've had to remove things, but just those are some examples.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's intense. Um, so you were talking about like, seeing you saw yourself as a fallen being, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And so how did that resolve itself? Like,
That really started to resolve itself where I knew definitively that I wasn't in 2018. And I had an experience that allowed me to see a reflection of myself, and I knew it. So again, that I think was programming. Also, that was implanted and put into me. Um, Against my will or willingly. I'm not sure. There's many different levels to why it was there, but I was able to see. I was able to see that light, and I was able to see that reflection. And I knew in that instant that that was never my story, and that was something else's story that wanted me to believe that. And it's not like it went away at that point. I was still dealing with the feelings coming up, and I was still dealing with the wounds in my own psychology that I had to heal of why it was there. But I could always go back to that frame of reference and go, I know I had this absolute intuitive moment that I absolutely knew was real for me. And I could go back to that as a, like my Christ truth, as my rock to know. Um, that it wasn't me, and I was okay if it was me. I had worked with that too, that okay, if I did the things that I heard or that were coming up for me, that it's fine because I'm not like that anymore. But there was just something wrong about me accepting that identity fully, even though I could accept it and move on from it. So there was always this confusion. It always it always left me with this state of confusion, and that was like the same thing with like my life. It's like nothing's really happening to me in this life. I can't really, nothing's horrible, but why do I experience this? I think and this life I've able to tune into a lot, um, maybe in the etheric realm or the more subconsciously. It's just what I've had to do. It's been my path of what I've needed to work on in my own psychology in this lifetime. So I've been given, I guess, the inner sight or the inner tools to go wherever I've needed to go and see whatever I've needed to see to clean this up in myself so that I could resolve it and heal it and move on.
Mm, mm.
It could be collective too. Like, I don't feel it's all me, but it could have been a partly a collective burden that I was dealing with also. I try not to go into, I used to be very much into, oh, the past life, the story, like really into the story, but now I don't go into the story as much. I just go into a story enough so that I can pick it apart and I can work on resolving it. And then I let it go if it was real or not real, the context in which my mind puts it together. I try not to get too hung up on it, because you really can. You can like really like get hung up on the story.
Yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, I try to just sort of, if a bit gets revealed to me, I know it's just there for me to look at, but it's more of an energetic story, really.
Hmm. And yeah, exactly. That's the beautiful way to describe it, an energetic story. So I'm bringing up my energetic stories and bringing it up in a way of whatever I need to, give it a label, give it a name. And that's, I think, one of the beauties about seeing something as a separate self, is that like really like you can really give it a face so that you can separate yourself from it and create its own identity, so that you can, as a self-aware being, see yourself outside of it and disconnect it. So when a certain trigger comes up, when a certain reaction comes up, if you've named that separate self, and you've created it, and you say, okay, this separate self, this self does this. When I'm in this situation, this self does that. When it comes up, you can remind yourself. Because I think in the beginning, when you're separating that energetic component, you have to remind yourself, I know I do, oh, that's that self again. I'm
Yeah.
stopping. I'm not doing that anymore. So I think it's a really, really helpful tool to be able to separate yourself from certain behavioral patterns.
Yeah, cool. So, how about you just give an example of, one or two separate selves and, like how you've separated it out and what you would identify that separate self as? Like, can you give an example and how it played out in your life, how you've dealt with it?
Hmm. Oh my.
Okay, I put you on the spot. You got
You put
lots
me
of
on the spot.
strong.
I guess I can I think that so one of my, like, I think with all avatars, or not all, but most avatars, rejection is the biggest, one of our biggest things.
Yep.
And also I was in a very big state of like victim consciousness. So I guess an example would be uh, turning everything outside of myself. So it's this situation, like it's the people in my life, they're causing my suffering. It's my situation where I live. It's this, it's that. So I really had to rein that in and work with that. So um, the victim self, and there's many aspects of it. So it's not like, for me, it's not just one self. It's like many facets, as we are many facets of a diamond
Yeah.
in the core of our flame. These selves have many aspects of them too, many layers, like the movie Shrek.
Correct.
Ogres
Yes.
are like onions,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
is the rest of life, I think. And these selves. But so I would work with that, and I would recognize that when I start to blame, or if I'm in a specific situation, oh, when this happens, what am I doing? Oh, I'm seeing myself as a victim. I need to stop that. So um, if I would want to go into a blame reaction, um, then I would stop myself, be like, no, this is that self, and then somehow that would kind of resolve itself. But then it would materialize in a different way, same situation, but in a different way. um, and then I would be able to look at it more. And so if I would see myself anyway as a victim, it doesn't mean that something is not happening, like that I need to roll over and put up with something, or that somebody is not treating me unkind. They might be still treating me unkindly, and then I have to do something about that. But I'm not a victim to it. So um, when I would separate myself from that victim mentality, I could then regain more power in myself. to make the choices and change. And I was able to then be more conscious of my reaction. So it wasn't really a reaction anymore, or it doesn't become a reaction anymore. It becomes a conscious choice on how to react. So that would kind of be the example that I could give.
Yeah, yeah. So rather than sort of saying, you did this to me, and sort of blaming it on the outside being the cause, you're able to just sort of transcend that and choose like a higher response, which is, I'm not comfortable with the way you're talking to me right now, and I'm unless you can get it together, I'm going to be walking away from this conversation, rather than you're treating me real shit and blah blah blah.
Yeah. Yes, I think one of my favorite sayings is that you can't do anything to somebody else, and the masters say the same thing. So I have not coined it, but you can't do something to somebody else that you're not already doing to yourself. So when I started to separate myself from that victim mentality of the reaction that I'm a victim because of my outer circumstances, then I had to deal with the opposing self, because there's an opposing self to each self, and that one was the one that was beating up on myself. So when when I was accusing somebody else of creating my situations and victimizing me, then I also had this internal self that was just as cruel inside of myself, and then I had to look at that and separate myself from that. And it's not linear, so none of this work is linear. um, so it's all kind of happening at the same time, and different aspects are coming up at different moments. Um,
Because it's like
so
you've already got this beating up on yourself that's in your own psychology. But then the way it works is the world is a mirror, and so it gives you that consciousness in the form of someone else to show you what that looks like, I guess.
it
Yeah.
does. It does. And then I think for them too, it also gives, I think when somebody is using an abusive behavior, it's then an opportunity for them to also see their behavior as well. So it's like your mirror, and then it's their mirror. And I guess the abusee becomes an opportunity for the abuser to also see something if they choose to want to recognize it in themselves. But the more neutral you become, and the more resolved you become in your own psychology of how you're dealing with it, and the more neutrality you have when they continue the same type of behavior, if you choose to be in the situation still, and if it feels right to you, then you become an opportunity for them um, to see what's going on in themselves.
Yeah. And I've got to say, like, that was my biggest stumbling block, like being unable to accept when somebody else didn't choose to look at their own behavior. And I'd be like, but that's not fair. I'm looking at myself and you're not. And it was actually the primal self that was just desperate to control and to show them any way, like, to step out of that reaction. And once I let go of taking that responsibility, oh, so much easier now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah, the rejection self, it still doesn't want to be rejected, even if it's bad behavior that's coming at you. It's almost even worse, because then you couldn't get them to, that the self wants the other person to change, and when they don't change, then the other self, it never wins, because also the separate self cannot ever change. It's just an energetic program. So it's not a self-aware being. It has a sense of awareness, of self-awareness, but it can never be anything different than what it was created for. So the trauma, or the wound response of why the self was created, it will never change its spots. It just can't. And I know that there are some selves that needed to be nurtured. So they're not always bad selves, but there's also selves that like have been really like protective selves that like I really had a hard time letting go of. That I felt like nurtured and loved and support me, and I almost felt like I was letting an old friend die. So
Mm.
there's other aspects of it too, where you just many different facets of how we need to release them. But once we do, we claim our freedom because we're we're connected more to our truth and to wholeness with our presence and with the masters. It's worth it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So thought I might just sort of just go on a slightly different tack. So I know you're obviously American born and everything, but you're living in Italy, and I'd just be curious to hear about, like, what took you to Italy, and how that experience is panning out for you.
Well, I'm here for 3 months. So the last 3 years, I've spent part of my time in Italy and then part of my time in the United States. And I ended up being able to get my Italian citizenship. So in 2019, I did a lot of traveling back and forth to Europe, mainly for the conferences, the Ascended Master conferences. And I just really fell in love with Europe. And I had thought I wanted, I was like, oh, I'd love to live here. And something just drew me there. Just this feeling of more. I think I enjoy my identity better in the space, or at least at the time, like it was a very big pull for me. Um, Being in Europe, it was like I could feel like I felt like who I wanted to be, and then being in the States, I came back home to my situation, and it was like everything would fall apart. Um, but I learned that I had the opportunity to qualify for citizenship in Italy, and because of my great grandparents immigrated from Italy. So I did that in 2021. And now I have the opportunity to be in both spaces. And I think it's a really cool opportunity because I look at myself from even 2019 to where I'm at now. And I'm trying to just enjoy my experiences wherever I go. So I feel like it's been an opportunity to also look at selves that brings things up for me and to resolve my own psychology um,
So
as well.
like different nations, there's like, a certain collective identity that goes with different nations. So how would you describe like the US collective identity, and then as compared to, like, the collective identity of Italy, or like what's the differences there, if you can pinpoint it? Is it possible?
Hmm. Um, I think with the collective identity in Italy, well, you have the Catholic Church here. I'd say that it's more closed-minded, and that's not just coming from me. A lot of Italians will say that, oh, it's just closed-minded. I think that there's more and more people opening up to the possibility of change. But I think in general, like Italy is more this kind of the way that we do things, and it stays, I'd say, more traditional.
Mhm.
The United States, I think over the last couple of years has been really crazy with the energy, with the division, with politics, and just with everything going on. There's definitely more of a sense of a flame of freedom. I can definitely feel the difference between the flame of freedom that I hold from being born in the United States. Um, I think it's just different. Like my level of expression, I think is still more. Um, Sometimes I feel I have to rein in my expression because it's just um, almost maybe considered rude. Um, I know it's
Oh,
kind of a
wow.
stereo. Yeah, it's just that I've I don't know how to. Oh, this is I'm on the spot again. I'm not really sure like how to explain it, but there's just a different quality of the feeling of being able to freely express in the United States versus here. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because I like, that's what I find I really quite like, talking with and connecting with American people, because I like that freedom. I like that. I love that sort of openness. And in Australia, I don't know, it's a different story here. There's sort of a lot more people holding, like holding back on themselves and they need a beer in their hand to have a bit of freedom, like, or they think they do. And so I find I actually love, like, for me, remember in the conference when Saint Germain sort of opened up the conference and he said, you know, what's the one word that, and he said it was, he wanted you to give one word that would describe American politics, but I didn't hear the politics bit. I thought of, for me, I just thought he said America, and so my word was actually, so ignore the politics bit, but my word was like progressiveness, because I just feel like American people are just sort of generally, I know there's people falling behind, but there's a real sort of moving forward feel for the people, like this openness to try more and try different things and express in different ways and be really open too. Like, I like that.
Yeah, I think mine was actually repression.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, which is the opposite of progression. But I mean, it's such a possibility. I mean, there's so much possibility. I mean, I see so much possibility.
Yeah, because I'm coming from the outside too, and so I'm based my that on just the people that I meet, and mainly the people that I'm connecting with from America are Ascended Master students. So, you know, I feel that's, yeah, it's a different level of it's a different level of people who are sort of more can do than the whole. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like for the United States, I don't know much like as far as like Italy. I don't know. I've not been involved with with the political um, the politics here, but I really do believe like the United States has such potential, and I feel it in my heart that we can do it. I mean, there's so many people who I think have that drive, who have that flame, who really want it. I think they're just afraid to speak up. And I mean, I really feel in my heart that it's possible that we can bring ourselves into alignment with what Saint Germain talked about and the other masters talked about in that conference, even more so than other U.S. conferences in the past. I
Yeah.
really, really resonated with this conference in a really positive light. Um, and I thought what was really interesting is that I don't have any desire to change anybody at all, but I want to enact these qualities in myself. That if I can really work at enacting these qualities in myself, then it will be in the collective. You know, so if somebody else chooses to do it, great. But I really want to be. I really strive for. I want to be the person that helps to bring this forward, even if nobody else chooses to do it. At least I know
Yeah.
that for me, I did it. And that, I mean, that's really what's important to me. And I think if more Americans could get onto that, to see that and get into that mindset, it's that do it because it's how you want to express yourself. It's your choice of expression, instead of trying to force other people or just be so politically divided. So.
Yeah, yeah, and I liked that sort of idea about, like, you know, um, not necessarily having to try and change other people's opinions, like, you know, whether they should be seeing things from a certain perspective, but to just challenge people to think, like, you know, what do you think about this, rather than just blindly, you know, when they're blindly following a blind leader, but actually go to just teaching by expressing your own thought processes and then asking people to express theirs too. Yeah, there's so many great tools that came through, like, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to close it up now. Would you believe the time has sort of come to an end?
It
So
flew by.
yeah, yeah. I know, and so much. It's been so lovely getting to know you more and more, Andrea. And
Me too.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, yeah. It's a real joy to be able to give the opportunity. Like, I didn't really know that's what I was doing when I came up with the idea. I don't think I even came up with the idea. I'm sure it was Saint Germain, um, but what I'm discovering is like I just love giving that opportunity um, for you to speak, and so we can just get to know you. So, yay!
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Well, goodbye to our viewers. Until next time. Farewell.
Bye. Thank you.